Hello and welcome into the Next Gen podcast here on the Bluff City Media Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and I'm joined by my co host, Alex Winton. And, took a little bit of a break the last week, kind of in this dead part of the offseason a little bit. But it is going to be picking back up in terms of NBA news. But it's a little bit different because, we're going to be moving into the FIBA World Cup. And obviously, going to be following a lot of Team USA. Uh, Jaren is playing for Team USA and seems to like he's going to have a pretty solid role for that team. We're going to get into that later. But the team overall, they just finished training camp, had their first exhibition game. And I feel like we've gotten to see a good amount of the team together to where we can start to have some takeaways at least. You know what I mean? So just starting out with the team in general, if you haven't seen the roster, Mikal Bridges, Brandon Ingram, Jaren Jackson Jr., Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, Austin Reeves, Cameron Johnson, Paolo Banchero, Walker Kessler, Josh Hart, Austin Reeves, Bobby Portis. I think I said everybody, but that's the roster. Which I always think is funny when it comes to this Team USA stuff because for some reason people like to pretend like the roster isn't good because LeBron and KD aren't on the team. But if you look at this team, the thing that I took away like when I first saw the roster is the positional versatility that they're going to have. And they have shown either in the scrimmages we've seen on YouTube and in the first exhibition game is that there's a lot of lineups they can do. And they have a lot of kind of positional versatility of guys that can play the 4 and the 5, guys that can play 1 through 3. Like they got a lot of guys that can do stuff like that. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they do it. Like I like Paolo Banchero. You could play him like what 3 through 5. Like he played a little bit at the 5 for this team in their first exhibition game. So I think just having a lot of guys like that is going to be cool. And then obviously Jaren Jackson Jr. being on the team, I think it's going to be a great pickup. We're going to get into more about like what he's doing and what Steve Kerr, the head coach of USA Basketball, has said about him too. But I'm excited for this FIBA World Cup stuff to get started. It's kind of a good bridge for in terms of like NBA stuff between summer league and the beginning of the regular season and NBA training camp and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think this team is again. I said it. I think yesterday on Twitter. I said I'm excited to see this team because I think they'll be better than most people think. Like you said, a lot of people are always with these FIBA teams, and I think also with the last team. I think if I'm not mistaken, the last team lost. So I think that is like bridged it, in a lot of people's minds when they think about the FIBA World Cup now. So
Yeah,
when
they
you
didn't just lose though; they came in 7th. Like they
yeah,
didn't even medal. So like,
yes,
but
yeah, it's
yeah,
bad. It gets bad. Well, not bad, but you know what I mean. Like that's going to be remembered in people's minds. Like so, because it usually doesn't happen, especially with USA. So I think that, along with like you said, there's not really. I don't think they said there's no All NBA guy on this roster right now that made an All NBA team. And so people look at that and they're like, okay, this team's not that good. But then people got it. When you really break it down, this team is really good. Like it's not like this team is bad. Like you got a defensive player here in Jaren Jackson Jr. You got multiple All Stars in Tyrese Halliburton, Anthony Edwards, Brandon Ingram, and personally, I think Brunson's an all-star level player. Then you got guys like Reeves, who's a really good player for the Lakers. Portis, Paolo Banchero, rookie of the year. Like you got a lot of guys, and like you said, a lot of versatility. I think really the one thing that's weaknessing is their front court in some ways because it seems like obviously with Kerr, he's probably going to play small ball lines, like you said. I think what we'll talk about a little bit later, but like Paolo played a lot of like small ball 5, especially I think a little bit in the second half or more in the second half. So I could see that. They're probably going to play a lot smaller, but even then, they're still going to have versatility because a lot of their players can basically switch 2 through 3. Obviously, Jaren is a switchable big. Kessler is when he plays. Like so, they'll have a lot of versatility. Again, I think for them, the main thing is just obviously defending. If they defend consistently, they'll beat everybody. Like they should dominate. Like they should because I don't think offense would be a problem. Like they got a lot. I think Curry even mentioned it. They got a lot of people that pass the ball, a lot of playmakers, so willing passers. So they're going to be able to move the ball and get open looks. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, like we said, we'll get into the exhibition game, but I don't even think they made a lot of threes yesterday. And they still won the game. So, I really like this team a lot. I especially like the starting 5. obviously that came out with, I think it's who was it, Brunson. You had McCall, I think Ingram. I'm trying to think of who else was it. Obviously, Jaren was in it.
Anthony Edwards, yeah, Jaren Anthony
Anthony
Edwards,
Edwards, yeah,
yeah.
Edwards, yeah. So I think that's a good starting five, and obviously they're still going to figure out the rotation. Like it's not probably set in stone, but I think from what I saw, I liked the rotation, and obviously again they're only going to get better. Like that was their first game out of like another I think 5 or 6 they still got left before they really play their first game. So yeah, I mean I like this team. Again, I think people are sleeping on the team because you don't got a lot of star names. You got a lot of young players. Let me say that. You got a lot of young players that are established, but not as established as the guys that have been around. So I think that's good, not only for them to get this experience, but for people to see that, hey, like this future of the league is in good hands. Like it's not, you know what I mean? Like people gotta just because you don't see KD and Steph and LeBron James, that doesn't mean that the league is just gone. You know what I mean? I think this is kind of like basically ushering in a new era of the younger guys starting to put their stamp on the league. So I do like that aspect of it as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one thing that was one of the reasons why people were probably a little bit down on the team too, on top of them being like younger guys and stuff like that, was they did lose to the select team. But that's one of those things where, the dream team did the same thing, right? They had to they scrubbed that from the history books. But the dream team lost to this select team the first day too. Now, I'm not saying this team is as good as the dream team or nothing like that. But it's like we have seen teams like the Olympic team in 2020 lost to Nigeria and then won the gold medal. So it's like I think people were putting a little bit too much stock in a 10-minute scrimmage, a 10-minute scrimmage. Like that's really what you got to think about. A quarter, right? And they beat them twice, so they were up at halftime basically. And you saw what they did in the second half in their exhibition game. So being up at halftime isn't that important. So and also when you look at the select team, now I'm not saying that I know every single roster, like the back of my hand, but when you look at some of the rosters on the FIBA World Cup, I really think like that select team, I'm not saying they would win the gold medal, but I mean, you got guys like Jalen Green on the team. Jalen Duren was incredible. Kate Cunningham, a #1 pick. Like, it's not like they were rolling up against like some college all-stars or something or even or something like that. Like they were playing established NBA guys. Like there were some G League Ignite guys and stuff like that on the roster too. But they were playing pro guys, they were playing solid players. And that was the first day. And then after that, they kind of locked in. And that second day, if you watch the tape, it just seemed like everything just meshed a lot better. And I felt like guys were really starting to buy in a little bit. And that's another thing you got to keep in mind. These guys haven't really played that much together. And I think that's something we're going to see just going over these next couple weeks before the big tournament starts when they have these exhibition games. I got a big one against Luka and Slovenia coming up this weekend. That's going to be awesome to watch. But I think we're going to kind of see them learn how to play with each other. There's some guys like, McCall and Cam Johnson have played together, but most of these guys have not really played together. Maybe in AAU or something way long ago if you look back, but most of these guys haven't really played together. So just seeing how they interact with each other kind of on both ends is going to be cool. And yeah, but I'm excited about the team. But we did have to get to the next topic because it all goes on this is who is the best player on Team USA? Right? It's a big question because a lot of people will probably say there's not one best player. In the first exhibition game, they had 7 players in double figures. And Austin Reeves had 9. So they almost had 8. Like everybody who came in the game scored. So they're a balanced team. But obviously, this is a Grizzlies podcast. But they asked the players on the team, and the players voted for Jaren Jackson Jr. Who am I to tell the NBA players that see them in practice every day that they're wrong? I wasn't in practice. So, if Jalen Brunson says that Jaren Jackson Jr. is the best player on Team USA, I'll believe him, So, hey, but they really just talked about like how we played on defense, kind of setting the tone. And a lot of the people that have been at the practices said that Jaren has been super vocal on defense. And I did notice that in the first exhibition game too, where he was like calling out a lot of stuff on defense and, doing all the stuff that they expect him to do, the stuff he does for the Grizzlies on a nightly basis too. So I think that's really cool to kind of see him grow into that leadership role. But yeah, there was a lot of stuff. I know that you got the article pulled up and everything, so you're ready to go, Alex. But when that first dropped, I know I saw you tweeting about it too, but I was kind of just like, yeah, it's time. Like it's time to put the world on notice of this next iteration of Jaren Jackson Jr.
Man, when I saw that article, I was like, well, because again, because I think there was another article that came out from ESPN that was where Jaren was talking to one of the reporters about, like navigating, like, the job suspension and all that and Bang getting the money. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm going to read it. But literally, like I said, like maybe a couple minutes after that, I saw the Athletic drop their article and then I read through it. I was like, man, like this is great for not only obviously because it backs up what I was seeing. Because like you said, they had the practice film, obviously with the select team. For both days. So you got to see people, that actually play. Obviously, like you said, we didn't see the whole practice, but you got to see some of it, like the scrimmage portion. And I was watching the second day, and I was like, I think I tweeted about it. I was like, Jalen Brunson and Jaren are setting the tone. And again, coming from me with Jaren, it might sound like I could be a homer, but usually I'm objective. Like it felt like he was really hooping in that thing, and they even said it in this article. The article backed it up. Like basically, they were saying, particularly Saturday, like his energy on the glass, and him going to the foul line was big for us. I think Paulo even said he was a presence. Like everybody was saying this. And now, granted, he wasn't the only one that got votes. Like I think Edwards got votes, K got votes, Ingram got votes, but he was the leading vote getter that everybody was impressed by. And again, that just shows that again, like people don't, I think Jaren is again, I've always said he's a polarizing player in the sense of like either people hate him or love him. But I think now a lot of people are starting to really appreciate him. I think I'm not saying he's I've been saying he's kind of, like I said, polarizing, but he's also underrated in the sense. Like I feel like, again, people watch the Grizzlies, but again, most people watch the Grizzlies because of Ja. Then when you watch the Grizzlies, you realize, oh, they got Ja, or not Ja, they got Jaren. Oh, they got Bang. Like they got not just them, they got two other All-Star level players, and particularly Jaren. Like you're talking about a dude who does things that not everybody does, and I think that's kind of the thing that these players kind of realize, and obviously coaches, like you see them on a nightly basis, but once you're around them on a day-to-day basis, it kind of changes your perspective of how, that you look at somebody. You know what I mean? And that could be good or bad. And for them, it's been good. So, I mean, with Jaren, I think he showed that again. I think he's one of their best players. Again, you can argue who the best player is. You can say Edwards, you can say him, you can say Ingram. You can say Halliburton. Like, there's a lot of guys, right? Like, this is a talented team. There's not
I
really a
think
big
I
gap.
think the thing is there's a lot of guys that are kind of like in the same stage of development, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
I
Yeah,
yeah, like Jalen Brunson is probably like the oldest dude, but that's just because he was a little bit of an older player coming out. But and Bobby Portis coming off the bench, he's a vet guy. But a lot of these guys like Brandon Ingram, Jaren, Anthony Edwards, Macau, they're all on this kind of like young wave of guys that you think are going to be all NBA. Like they could, like all of those guys could be all NBA next season. Like I would not be surprised if Jalen Brunson and Jaren Jackson Jr., Brandon Ingram, or Macau made any of the all NBA teams next year. It wouldn't be surprising at all. So it's like that kind of level of player where they're not going to be perennial all NBA necessarily, but every year they're going to be in the conversation. And then I do also want to shout out Austin Reeves too, just for I feel like just as a 6-man role, he's going to be perfect for that. And that's how Steve Kerr has been using them so far, and I think that's going to be really good for them. He kind of came in. He's at the microwave badge on 2K, man. But it was really good to see that he doesn't just do that when he plays the Grizzlies. He does it whenever he's playing anybody. So like it was good to see him play well for Team USA and everything like that. But I just think the team overall is going to be really good. Like Tyrese Halliburton, just all the stuff that he does, like the playmaking juice that he has with the ball in his hands, the assist to turnover ratio. It's kind of like you just know he's gonna throw the ball to the right person. Like he's not gonna turn the ball over. He had 12 assists in the exhibition game, all that. So there's a lot of people that you could say is the best player on this team. Obviously Jaren won the votes, and I'm gonna go with Jaren too, just because of like the two-way potential. You know what I mean? Just because I feel like overall the one thing that they don't have, like they have Macau, who's a really good perimeter defender, but there's a lot of stuff that Jaren is going to have to cover up for, like once people get onto the interior and stuff like that, which that's what he does for the Grizzlies too. That's what he's known for. But I think that just him being as good as he is on defense and basically being like the anchor of the defense. Plus, when you look at all the stuff he's going to be doing on offense when he has the ball and when he doesn't have the ball, it's going to be really interesting to see that. But yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to get into. Next is Jaren, just specifically his impact. And there's a couple things that I noticed just watching the game because it's a little bit of a different role than he has with the Grizzlies because, he's not playing next to another big per se. Like he's not playing next to Steven Adams, Xavier Tillman, even Santi Aldama at times, even if he is playing the five, he's not playing next to another traditional big man. And I think that's something that he had to adjust to. And also, he's used to playing with Steven Adams. Steven Adams is the guy. He's the guy who gets the rebounds. He's the guy who's the primary screen setter on their sets that are like non-pick and roll stuff, and even with pick and roll stuff, he does a lot of that too. But it really just felt like, Jaren doesn't set as many screens as you would think he does just because of how good of a screener Steven Adams is. But when you look at Team USA, like I think he is a part of every set they run. Like almost every set that they've run includes whether it's Jaren setting a pick or Jaren running the pick and roll or Jaren doing a pick and pop. Like he has been a part of all of their sets. And it kind of reminds me of like how Draymond is. He's not the passer that Draymond is, but when it comes to like the stuff he's doing, like the screen setting, the off ball stuff, and then some of the pick and roll stuff that he did, it's like he's much better of a scorer, but he's not as good of a passer. So it's like I think Steve Kerr has done a good job of kind of modifying that role a little bit for him just to like really get to his strengths a lot more. But yeah, that's what I really noticed on offense. And then they did a really good job of, getting him the ball in the post. He's going to have a lot of mismatches the entire tournament. Like he's going to be a mismatch. There's going to be a lot of teams that are going to struggle to guard him. And, that was the case. And they came out the first possession, threw the ball to Jaren. He bullied somebody and got an easy layup. And it was like, yep, this is what it's going to be like.
Yeah, I talked about this on Twitter, and again, I said it basically because there was a thread of this dude talking about Jaren, how you were saying how they're using him and basically his impact. Basically, showing flashes, using him in DHO actions and as a screener, as a roll man. I said it, him becoming a better screener and passer and obviously rebounder, I think will be bigger for him as a complete player. Like again, obviously we're gonna focus on scoring with him this over the course of Team USA, but I think him doing this is gonna help those areas way more, which will make him a better player overall, more so than him taking the scoring league. Because I think the scoring league will naturally happen just because of him just getting better and bigger, stronger, all that, more reps. But the other stuff takes a little bit more time. And I think that's really what I'm interested to see. And I think you're gonna see a way he could be used with the Grizzlies. And I think again, because people were talking about like, man, we need to use Jaren like this in the Grizzlies. And I will preference this by saying this roster is built more so for him to optimize that type of ability that he has. Not to say the Grizzlies don't have the roster to do it, but I think this roster obviously is more built for it better than the Grizzlies roster in the sense because you got more star talent and stuff like that. But like the key is he's playing in space basically, and you're allowing him to be able to do a lot of different things without having to worry about help defenses being able to come over and help, and for him to be able to operate and do what he needs to do on both ends of the floor. And so like yeah, his impact will be a lot different. Like you said, it's gonna be like Draymond-esque. And again, he's not gonna be same level of passer, but if he can make the simple basic reads and set screens well and not get chippy, fouls that are just unnecessary, moving screens, stuff like that. You'll see him really have a really complete game. He might not be the lead scorer, but I could see him have a game where he'll have like 14 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 blocks, and those type of games where you'll really see his impact and see his impact everywhere. And I think that's really the big thing for them is they need a guy like that. They're going to need him, like you said, with how they're built. I'm not saying they're built like the Grizzlies, but like you said, they depend on him to be the anchor. Like that's the reason why he's playing the 5, and they got him at the 5. They're going to depend on him to play big minutes, and he can only pick up 5 fouls, so he's got to make sure he stays out of foul trouble. And because again, he's dependent on to be that on defense, and then offensively, like you said, they're going to play through him a little bit. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of mismatches because they're going to switch. They're going to, like you said, first play of the game, I think they, like I said, they ran some screens and he got a mismatch and they threw it into him. They're going to do that a lot, and that wasn't the only instance he got mismatches. They run a lot of pick and rolls a lot of 5-out motion. So like they do a lot of stuff that's going to present mismatches for him to score. And then again, if they're going to double, they're just going to have to pick their poison because he'll be able to make the right read and stuff like that. So yeah, I do like how Jaren's used because I think Jenkins could see this and be like, okay, we can start using him like this with our team. And then that's where you really get something really good because now if you can bring your version of Jaren to the regular season with the Grizzlies, then you're in for like a really good player. And like you said, an all NBA type of talent. If he gets, if he reaches those levels and, of consistency. So yeah, I do like how this will coincide with him going into the regular season.
Yeah, definitely. And then, like you said, on his defense, on the defensive end, I mean, just because of like, there's some of the FIBA rules that do make it a little bit easier. No defensive 3 seconds. He hasn't had a block where he hits it out off the rim yet, but I think we will see that at some point. Just because of how he is, I think it will be pretty funny to see that. That's one of the things I feel like just you grow up not doing that, so you just don't think to do it in the game. Like that's just not how people play. So, but I think we're going to see that at some point. But just for me, it was more when he did, even when he didn't get the blocks, that was really the impressive thing to me because there's a lot of times where it was just like he just blew up the play, and like I think there was one time it ended up with a questionable foul, but there's another time where they ran their set and, had a wide open dude in the paint, or he thought he was wide open, and then Jaren came out of nowhere and he's like, nope, yeah, okay, pass it back out. And it's like that kind of stuff is what really, the plays that he makes, whether it's like switching on to multiple guys, like on one of the plays where he got the block, he switched on to 3 different people and then ended up getting the block at the end of the play and then goes down and scores on the other end. So it's like just all that kind of stuff that he can do is going to be so important for this Team USA team. And like I said, the coaches, the players, everybody has been raving about him. And it's just, it's been cool to see so far, and I just think going forward it's going to be a lot. But yeah, Steve Kerr talked about how he's filled out. He's gotten way bigger, way better. And I think that I think Steve Kerr was actually one of the people that has really been pushing for Jaren to be on the team for a couple of years because I remember seeing a report probably at the beginning of this season where they were saying the same thing, and it's clear that they have thought about how to use him. They've watched a lot of his tape, obviously from coaching against him and also, now coaching for him and taking some of the stuff like, what would I not want the Grizzlies to do against me, and then taking that and using that against other teams. So I think it's been really cool to kind of see the different ways that he's been used. And then, yeah, I think Taylor Jenkins and the Grizzlies coaching staff as a whole could take some notes on that. And it's also a way for you to see a little bit more of what Jaren looks like at the 5. They got Steven Adams playing the 5, and when he's healthy and back, he's going to be the starting center, and all the stuff he does is amazing. But it's one of those things where it's like, one day Jaren might have to be more primary 5, so it's just a little bit of a glimpse at that, obviously with a different roster, but it's a glimpse of that without having to, change up your starting lineup, throughout the season. So it's like you kind of get to see it for free without having, worry about, are we going to mess up the lineup, mess up the rotations? Are we going to lose games because of this, all that? But yeah, overall, like I said, I've been impressed with Jaren, and I think that we're going to continue to be impressed with him going over the next couple weeks and going into the tournament. But it's clear that he's focused. He wants the gold medal. Maybe FIBA MVP. Like, who knows? We'll see what happens if he plays as well. But got to get into like the first game too, the exhibition game. So I'll preface it. Obviously, it was against Puerto Rico, so they're not necessarily like a powerhouse team. Obviously still pros. Tremont Waters played incredible for Puerto Rico. He had a really good game. I think he's going to take over now that Patty Mills is kind of on his way out. He's going to take over as that small guard that always cooks in the FIBA play. Like he's taking over that mantle, and it seems like he's ready for it. But in the first half, they kind of came out and it seemed like maybe a little sluggish, I guess. Jaren came out. He played really well to start. I think he had 8 of their first 12 points, had a block. I felt like he kind of set the tone for them. And you could really see all the stuff, like I said, about his defense very early on. And then Austin Reeves came in, had a spark off the bench and kind of got him going a little bit. And then I really think it was just the second half. You really get to see like the results of their defense because they are a really good defensive team. They've got a lot of really good defenders, and they've got a lot of people that are good at. They got good hands. They deflect passes, and then they also have a lot of guys who like to run in transition. So Tyrese Halliburton running out in transition, finding everybody. It was awesome to watch. Jalen Brunson did a good job. Cam Johnson ran the floor really well. Had a couple dunks. Had an alley oop. And then Mikal Bridges too. Mikal Bridges ran the floor really well too. So just all of these people that haven't really played together, you could kind of see them in that second half. It felt like they kind of started to mesh and really started to become a team.
Yeah, I think the thing I said it earlier and I'll say it again. I said it on time. If they defend, they will not lose. I am that confident in this team offensively. They will not defensively, like defense is the main thing. Offensively, they're gonna make plays. Like they shot six. I got the stat sheet up. They shot 6 of 27 from 3 yesterday, and they still won by like 30, 40 points. Like they're going to get looks. You know what I mean? They had 29 assists as a team, right? So they still gonna move the ball. Curry even said they're gonna move the ball. And like you said, really the defense in the second half, really that third quarter is where they turned up. Again, like they really started to lock in defensively. And again, I think a lot of it really starts on the perimeter and point of attack. Not really the defense, the anchor. Like I think Jaren's obviously going to defend, and obviously Kessler and maybe Paulo is a question at the 5. But I mean, obviously you'll be able to play some lineups where you can hide them or stuff like that. But like really, my question is how you gonna guard on the perimeter? Because first half they kind of like you said, they were sluggish, but I felt like they were tense offensively. Like they were just shooting they were getting good looks, but they just couldn't make them. Like everybody was getting good looks, and like you said, Jaren set the tone obviously early. I said it. I think I said it as like if the first basket. I'm like, okay, like he's locked in. They're making him sure he's assertive, and like you said, I think he had 8 points. So they were making sure he got the ball inside. But then again, like you said, Reeves was a spark too. Reeves really impressed me. Edwards really impressed me, especially the second half. He started to really come into his own. And then Mikal Bridges obviously as well. I think those are really kind of the standouts for me that first game. Not to say like Ingram and Brunson didn't play well. I just thought they again defensively the people I named play both ends well. But yeah, I mean I think they're gonna be fine. Again, I think the question is just about the defense, perimeter defense. How and I think it'll get better because like you said, it's people haven't played together yet. They're still trying to learn each other. So, defense is a chemistry thing. So you need more reps and time together. So that's why these exhibition games are good. And again, like I saw people tripping off the score being close in the first half. I'm like, bro, let it develop. Like it's like we talked about earlier. Like people see this scores and things in this nature and don't use context, like them losing the select team. Like stuff like that, like where, like they're not really thinking about it. Like this team, how we see this team now is not going to be the team that plays their first game in like the last week of August. Like they're going to be a totally better team as long as everybody's healthy. Like that's just what it is. And so I think I'm very confident that this team will get it done again. I think they'll start making shots. Like obviously Brunson's going to shoot the ball better. Edwards will shoot the ball better. I think those guys, Reeves, Halliburton, like all these guys are going to shoot the ball better. A lot of these guys can shoot the ball. Like they're really solid shooters. So, yeah, I think really just once they started locking in defensively, again, like they blew them out by like 30, 40 points. So I just think this team is, that's really going to be their question. And obviously I think the front court as well, like the size. And if they run into a team that's big, will you have to go to a double big lineup with Jaren and Kessler or Jaren and Portis and Kessler? Like, will you have to do that? I think that may be another question for me. But outside of that, I don't really have many questions about this team at all. They just need time and experience together and they'll be fine.
Yeah, I definitely feel the same way. I mean, obviously, there's going to be some other teams that we'll probably get into as we get a little bit closer, and as we get to see some more of these other teams. We're going to get a big look at Slovenia, and Luka's played incredible in Slovenia's game that they just played. I think 34-point triple double. But it's one of those things where it's going to be mostly Luka. Not to say that the other guys aren't good, but you're coming into that game, you got to stop Luka. And if you can stop Luka, you can worry about the other guys later. So it's going to be interesting to see that. And then I'm interested to see Canada. I think Canada's going to be really good. They got SGA, RJ Barrett. They got some good guys on that roster. So I think that's going to be another team that could be interesting to watch. But overall, based on what I saw in the first game, I mean, like you said, you got to have context with everything. It was close in the first half, and a lot of people were freaking out about that. But it's an exhibition game. The actual tournament doesn't start for 3 weeks. Like you said, they're going to be better once they play more together. I think that having a guy like Tyrese Halliburton basically be in the backup point guard is going to be really big for that second unit too, because you have a guy that's so pass first and can really get the bench players involved, and then also in some of the rotations, you're going to see a lot like Tyrese Halliburton played with Jaren too. And the way that Tyrese Halliburton plays in the pick and roll with those two, I think that's something I'd like to see. I'd even like to see some of Reeves and Jaren in the pick and roll too. Like honestly, you can do it with anybody at this that's a primary ball handler, and it will probably work. But those two guys in particular. And then I did also want to mention Mikal Bridges, just because I feel like the FIBA game overall is more kind of like old school game. So like guys like Mikal and Bi that are like post up mid range shooters like they are and high tier at that are always really good for stuff like the FIBA World Cup. And I think he did a really good job of kind of getting to his spots. And it can be hard for some of these people. It's probably a little bit easier for Mikal because he's played with Devin Booker and he's played with Chris Paul, and he knew what it was like to kind of like play off of other people more so than having the ball in your hands all the time. But it can be difficult sometimes for players like like a guy like Anthony Edwards is one of the guys where it's like he's so used to being like the number one guy, as not to say that he's not one of the like top guys on this team, but there's so many other people around you. And I think a little bit early in the game, maybe he took a couple ill-advised shots, but it really felt like he found his rhythm in the second half too. But I think Mikal did an awesome job of, waiting for his spots and then kind of taking over when he needed to. And then I'd also say, Brandon Ingram didn't shoot the ball well. And I know some people were getting on him a little bit, but I think there's going to be a couple games where Brandon Ingram is going to win some games with his shot making ability for this Team USA. Like down the stretch of games, it's going to be really big to see what he does, between him, Anthony Edwards. And I think that's such a big thing. Like they're going to have enough offense. Like when you look at the team, Jalen Brunson is going to be scoring. Anthony Edwards, Jaren's going to score. Like they have enough offense. The biggest questions for me also is going to be on defense. But they can answer a lot of those perimeter defense questions if they, lock up Luka, and I'd expect Mikal Bridges to be on Luka in that game. I don't know. We'll see what they decide to do. Maybe they'll put Ant on him. I don't know. But that can be a conversation for, closer to the game, I guess. But there's a lot of stuff that is going to be interesting to watch, even before they get to the tournament. But I think the number one takeaway that I'll have just for the team in general is, they're focused. They want the gold medal. None of these guys were on the last team, I don't think, that, came in seventh, but they all know that that's what happened. And I think that kind of feel, not to say it's like the same level of like the Redeem team or something, that was the Olympics, is a lot different, but it's kind of like that same kind of feel. And I think that they're going to be locked in and they're going to be ready just down the stretch for this. And I'm just really excited for everything that's going to be coming with this Team USA stuff the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think this team is again, I think they're gonna get better as this goes along. I mean, I think you got a lot of unselfish guys. Uh and it just seems like they're unselfish. Like again, like I mean a lot of these players I've been fans of already. You know what I mean? Like I've been a fan of Halliburton, been a fan of Edwards, and those guys like you said, I think they got a lot of options. I think that's really where it all comes down to. Like you said, Ingram will win them a couple games, or it could be Edwards. Shoot, it could even be Jaren. And again, you got a lot of guys like who are versatile and can play different roles. Like Mikal Bridges has obviously was the go-to guy in Brooklyn, but like you said, him playing off of CP3 and Devin Booker and even Aiden at times, like he had to find a role. So it's going to be easy for him to just seamlessly find a role in this team because that's what he's done majority of his career. So and I mean obviously like guys like Portis and Reeves have been role players. You know what I mean? So again, a lot of these guys have understood their roles on the teams, and I think they'll buy in. Again, I think it's very clear that these team guys buy in because even with the select team thing, right? They lost the first day, but then the second day they really locked in, and then they swept through that whole thing. So, again, like you said about the teams that could give them trouble. I mean, I think obviously you could point to the Canada team. I think is probably the biggest thing because again, I worry again perimeter defense, and they got guys like Shea and Jamal Murray. And again, I think that's why, if I'm not mistaken, there's an article that came out basically said that's why they had Cade there as a select guy, basically to simulate that type of style of play where they're running the offense to one player, and they basically have to guard that one player and in different ways. So, Shea plays a similar type of play style. Luka does too. So, I think they'll obviously be ready for those things. It'll be interesting to see, but I really think Canada is a team that could give them problems. But I mean, that's to be determined. I mean, Spain too, obviously, they got a decent team. So, it'll be interesting to see. But I mean, I think this team is going to be good. Like, it's hard for me to see it unless somebody gets hurt, which I'm hoping nobody gets hurt. Not going like I hope nobody gets hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this team will end up, like you said, they know what happened last time. Like, they're motivated. So I think they'll have a sense of, focus and, energy to them about it. Like, they're not going to sleepwalk through these games. So, yeah, I think
for sure.
They'll lock in. So, yeah.
I will say, I know Spain is ranked number 1 in the world right now, too. And I got to see a little bit of their first game. Santi Aldama played really well in their game, too. So that's something else that we're going to be keeping track of at the FIBA World Cup is how he did. But he has 16 points in his first game. And I think he's going to be pretty good. And a lot of the players, Juancho Hernangomez, which I think that for the FIBA World Cup, we got to call him Bo Cruz. Because that was not just regular Juancho Hernangomez in that first game. That's Bo Cruz from Hustle. Because that man was hooping. Like, he was hooping like Bo Cruz in that movie. Like, that's what he looked like. I think he had 27 in their first game. So, like, that's what we're calling him Bo Cruz for this run. But, yeah, man, there's a lot of really good teams. I'd also mention France. I really wish that Victor was playing, like, just because it would be awesome to see that. But, Victor, he decided to play Summer League instead. And, I got to see him live, so I'll take that. I'm not going to be mad at that. But if he was playing, it would be really interesting. But, they're still going to have, like, Gobert, Nicholas Batum, guys like that. And, they got the silver in the Olympics. And they're going to be good. And there's a lot of more teams that might have a chance to, maybe not beat the US, but give them trouble in a game just because they have like some NBA players and stuff and some guys that are all-star level guys and stuff like that. Karl Anthony Towns is going to be playing in this too. Like there's a lot of people that are going to be playing on a lot of different teams, and even some people that you might be a little confused on why they're playing for that team, like Kyle Anderson playing for China. That was kind of a wrench that kind of got thrown in there at the end. But yeah, like I said, I'm excited for the FIBA World Cup. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on in the next couple of weeks. We're going to be sure to keep everybody updated with everything that's going on with the FIBA World Cup, whether that's here on the podcast. I'm going to be writing some articles talking about it too, and everything like that. But I appreciate everybody who listened to this episode. For my co-host, Alex Winton, I'm Bryson Wright. Thank you for listening to the Next Gen podcast, and we'll see y'all next week.